Hello and welcome to Cannamantv. My name is Connor McLeod, and in this extremely enjoyable interview, I get the chance to chat with fellow YouTuber and activist Martin Condon. In this interview, we discuss Martin's World podcast, social policy surrounding cannabis, what an ideal legal cannabis situation would look like, DMT and other psychedelics, and what Martin has in store for future activism. Make sure to like and subscribe, and join us on Patreon so you can support the channel further. Now then, let's talk cannabis. How you doing, man?
Excellent, man. Yeah, really good now. It's Monday, fucking first day back at it. It's been a well enjoyed break.
Yeah, did you have a good New Year, good Christmas?
Yeah, it was fine. Spent it mostly with the family, but nice and quiet, laid back. You know, nothing too exciting going on. So we just chilled and hung out.
Yeah, we were exactly the same.
The hardest part of it was just trying to fucking leave the phone alone and not go into my old habits of looking through the news and interacting with just the social media and stuff, because that was the biggest thing I needed to get away from, really. I was feeling burnt out there after the last few months.
Yeah, you've been working hard, man. Do you get a wee bit of withdrawals as well? Do you get kind of like you find yourself chapping at the bit to touch the phone?
Oh yeah, big time. Especially when it comes to this activism stuff. Like first thing in the morning, I want to check my phone and see what's going on out there and get informed and start getting the message out there to people as to what's going on in the world of cannabis.
Yeah, no, exactly. Keep yourself well hydrated. I'll point out I've actually got extremely awkward toothache at the moment, so I've gobbed a brownie about 15 minutes ago. I made canna butter brownies a couple of days ago. Yeah, and I had a couple sittings, so I was like, oh, well, I might as well. So just burst past the fucking toothache, but yeah, it should be fine, man.
Yeah, job, man. That's a job. I'm bowled up here anyway as well. I've coffee and smokes.
Excellent. I'm the same. I've got a joint sitting here in my fucking Cannamantv mug. Don't know if you can see that.
Nice job, man. Nice job. Happy days.
The thing is, I intend on, I've not got the website up or that kind of stuff. I intend on having this stuff available, but I actually took one of these cups to work and somebody fucking stole it. Can you believe that?
I know. I suppose that's take it as a compliment.
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping so, man. But yeah, so we'll just get stuck in, Martin. I take it. I mean, you're going live at 4:20. Is that right?
Yeah, I've doing a 4:20 live show there, but we're good up until kind of 3 or half past. Once I got an hour just to do the final preps.
Yeah, excellent. How are you finding?
All of the news is covered. Say that again.
I've yet to go live myself. How are you finding going live? Is it relatively awkward? That you just?
Oh man, it's stressful. Fucking like I've the fresh t-shirt every time afterwards, because you're just left in a bit of a sweat afterwards, because you're on the spot, like, you know. That there's no going, like, you can go back at make edits afterwards for the re-uploads, like, but when you're live, and I kind of prefer that way. Like I like being on the spotlight. I don't know, is it something I carry over from being in college,
right.
Where you have an assignment, and the kind of the way that it gets done is the night before or under pressure. Higher science certificate in good manufacturing practices and technology. So it's all around manufacturing medical devices and pharmaceuticals and stuff, the regulations, quality control, and all of that boring stuff. So I was destined to actually head into the chemical engineering department. I was being headhunted there by one of the lecturers within it, because I was just so into chemistry. I was really into that side of things, like organic chemistry and just the interaction of the different molecules. But the herbal science, then when I kind of read across the modules and the descriptor there, I was just like, that's more in line with me, because I'm a small bit of a health freak as well. I'm well into kind of eating healthy, living a healthy lifestyle and all of that stuff as well. So
Excellent.
The herbal science was more in line to me. The chemical engineering, like right now, I wouldn't be talking. Shall I be in some factory somewhere or in a lab somewhere, probably getting paid 100,000+ a year. But that wasn't the life for me. I'm not I live a lean lifestyle. Like 100,000 a year, that's not appealing to me as such. Give me 30,000-40,000 a year and actually a job that my heart is really in. The cannabis industry, or some sort of an industry where you're where the end product helps a person, or the service you provide really helps the person, as opposed to be working in Pfizer's or Johnson and Johnson. And I'm not saying that their products don't help people. It's just there's the ethos of their business isn't in line with my own ethos.
Yeah, there's certainly a ethical dubiousness about it, and it's that thing that you mentioned, man, where, like, what's the point in that? A lot of people some people might not be aware of the basis of that. You know, it's like 100 grand. Why would you not turn that down? It's like, but if you're doing a job that you hate for 100 grand, you're not happy by the end of that 100 grand comes in the bank. Whereas if you're doing a job where even if less than 30 grand a year, but if you're doing it every day and you love it every day, you're not working a day in your life.
And those jobs with 100 grand come with restrictions as well, you know. Like having a 100 grand job, while appealing it is, it's almost like having a noose around your neck in certain regards, because you're restricted in everything you can do. I know people work in those 100 grand of jobs, and those are the people who send me messages saying, "Love what you're doing, Martin, but I can't like and share your posts. I can't
Yeah,
like interact at all because my boss might see it," because they're terrified that
yeah,
if they lose that job, they lose their livelihood. So in essence, like, it's like having a noose around your neck, because if you lose the job, you know, it's like your life, the life as you know it, is kind of going to be really upended. Because trying to replace 100,000 a year job, like it wouldn't be an easy thing to do. If you're losing it for the cannabis kind of thing, like, you know.
yeah. Well, I mean, most people as well have like their house invested into their job, and they've got their car invested into their job, and their lifestyle actually is dictated based on their wage. So it's not just a
Yeah.
case of losing their job; they're losing their entire lifestyle. I've had the same thing, though, Martin. When you mentioned that there about how people won't even share your posts because it's cannabis related, I've had the exact same thing from friends, people that work at gyms and stuff like that. They're like, "Oh, I better not. I can't like it." It's like, but this is ridiculous. It's like they're going to come up at a point in the near future where these circumstances are going to make people either embarrassed or they'll just be hidden. Oh no, I didn't act like that. I've always been a proponent, you know.
Yeah. No, I hope 2021 for Ireland anyway will be a big kind of coming out of the closet moment for all of these people. You know, we really have to just break down that barrier to make it easier for people to come out and say, you know, I'm a cannabis consumer, and so what? Like, well, why is it okay for a job to discriminate against a person for being a cannabis consumer? Because like any job that does drug testing, they're basically discriminating against you. You could be a cocaine user and get away with drug testing, but if you're a cannabis user, it's just so much more difficult. Like, so
Yeah,
there's just so much there to keep you from doing it,
yeah.
and it's just wrong that we allowed to do it. Imagine if you went into work on a Monday morning and they could test if you were drinking on a Friday or Saturday night, and your boss said, you know, you're fired. You were drinking on Friday night. You know, we can see it here in your system. This is terrible. You know, why are you using drugs? Like that's the same thing that we're doing with cannabis. You know, oh, but because it's illegal, that's okay to discriminate against us.
I
You know,
love that
this
when you're
was the
using it.
same thing with being gay not too long ago, you know.
Well, exactly that. Exactly that. It's perfect to use alcohol as well because the entire Irish and Scottish economy would fall flat on its arse if that happened.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And our societies, we don't look at these things as drugs. Like when we talk about alcohol, we don't talk about it as a drug. We talk about it as alcohol. You know,
Yeah,
when you talk about alcohol addiction, you have alcoholics. Like they're not drug addicts. You know,
yeah,
there's a big difference there in the terminology and how we view these people. And it's just straight up discrimination, not only against our community as cannabis consumers, but all of the other drug users, the other illegal drug users. And what my eyes really got open in my journey in activism, it started off being kind of like legalized cannabis because of my own life experiences. But once I kind of got to learn the prohibition across the board, it's wrong. Like people who are being punished for being addicted to drugs, they're basically being punished for having a health problem. Like if we
yeah,
look at addiction, being an alcoholic, that's a health problem. You know, why is it being a drug addict a health problem? You know, why does that have to come with handcuffs and these kind of punitive punishments where they're fining you and locking you up and all of this kind of crap? It's
yeah.
ridiculous.
It's
It's bang out of
100%,
order.
Martin. I fully agree. And that thing you touched on a second ago there about language in particular, I think that's crucial when it comes to normalising cannabis in particular. But as drugs, if the reality is, Portugal is always the best example of that. You know, Portugal is a leading example of decriminalising to an extent where it's not criminalised anymore. It's now a health issue, like you mentioned, and this is what it should be. It's a social issue. There's never going to be a cessation of people using substances to alter their consciousness. This has been
Yeah.
around since before history, all that kind of stuff, and yet we're in a situation where it's almost politically convenient to put these barriers into place. It brings in finances and all these to the wrong people, obviously, but then
Yeah.
inevitably makes every single person and every civilian that engages in something that's not been stamped by the government to say that it's accessible. They are then frowned upon, cursed to the society, and what is it? Undesirable, essentially, when it
Yeah.
comes to
Second
socialization.
class citizens, like, yeah, basically you're outclassed. Your freedom to associate it's basically it's infringed upon. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's a human right, the freedom to associate, and that's the one I'm trying to really get out there now to people is the how this discrimination. There's a prohibition of discrimination in the European Convention on Human Rights. It's Article 14, I believe, in the European Convention on Human Rights. That mightn't apply to you now, actually, since the 1st of January, actually, because of, but we won't go there. We won't go there.
That's a whole new podcast.
Yeah, I know, I know. But there's a prohibition on discrimination as well as there's a prohibition of cannabis. But our society only actually upholds the prohibition of cannabis, and the prohibition of discrimination is secondary to that. But my argument is our human rights are not secondary to these acts and statutes put in place by people who've been proven to be corrupt before in our past, i.e. the governments. You know, in Ireland, the UK isn't any different. You know, there's been tribunals and investigations done as the dodgy dealings that many of these politicians have done over the years. You know, where they would sign off on a contract or something, and later on they're actually the chairman then of that board when they get out of politics. You know, all of this kind of dodgy stuff. So these people are not infallible. They're not uncorruptible. And when they put in the laws around cannabis and stuff, it was so bloody long ago. It's just wrong now that these things they continue on. I forget the point I was making, but what I want to go back to is what you were saying there about Portugal. Is I was over there not too long ago, and I experienced the side effects of decriminalization. Basically, what happens over there, and I met Joe Glow, the policymaker who actually designed the policy and implemented it back in 2002 in Portugal. We had him over doing a tour of Ireland. But when I was in Portugal there, it was back in November, I believe it was, and I was in Lisbon, and I was walking the street. Some dude offered me some hash, and I was like, feck it, like I'll try it out, like, and it looked good. It looked good now, like did the egg kind of shape, and he opened it up, burned into it, smelled nice and everything, and I was like, all right, yeah. He didn't actually burn into it. He opened it up, he bit off a piece, and he was like, oh, smell, and it smelled okay. I should have done the burn test, because as soon as I done the burn test, I knew straight away. I was like, shit, I'm after being caught. But what happens? Decriminalization, it enables low-level drug dealing on the streets. So if you can carry a 10-day supply, that means you can supply 10 people with 1 day's worth of drugs. And you can do that countless times across the day. And João Glau brought that up. He said, look, Portugal done a big experiment for Europe, and he said it was a very successful one. And there has been a lot of learning from that, he goes, as to how we deal with drugs in our society. And he said that the decriminalization was a very good step in the right direction. But he said the next step now for any European state, country, whatever, to take this project on for themselves, it's to supply the drugs. Because as I said, like that's the effect of not supplying the drugs. They're still supplied by people on the street, by dealers, and the quality is an issue there, you know, and all of that's kind of stuff that goes on. So that's what Joe Glow said when he was in Ireland back in 15 or 16. We had him do a tour here of Ireland with Mark Emery, actually, of all people. It was an amazing it was an amazing tour. We went to NUIG, Trinity College, and UCC as well. Right. But again, like, well, we had Joe Glow here, the policymaker behind all of that. None of our own policymakers actually came to meet him while we had him over doing a tour. But a month later, they flew over to Portugal to meet him. I'm just like, what's the story there? Why you didn't engage with us? We were Students for Sensible Drug Policy was our organisation. We were running in, I believe, 4 or 5 colleges across Ireland. Had over nearly 1,000 members, I'd say, across all of the colleges. I know on CIT, where I ran my chapter, I had nearly 230 members in our biggest year anyway.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, no, it was a very active organisation across Ireland. We were networking between all the colleges and getting events kind of coordinated right across all the counties in Ireland. One of the biggest events we coordinated actually was a Support Don't Punish event, which is run every year on the 26th of June, I believe. And we had it in 12 counties, towns or cities across Ireland. And it was kind of a grassroots network. And what we did those days was to set up a table, an event in each town or city that we were running in, and to get information out there as to why we should be supporting drug users and not punishing them. You know, it's Support Don't Punish was the event. So support these people. You know, if they've got a health issue, treat them like so. You know, if a person is obese, do we punish that person? Like, no, we don't. They have a health issue. You know, if a person has any other sort of health issue, we treat them with compassion and we want to help them. Why don't we do this for these people who have health issues around drugs? Why do we always want to punish them? So that's the message of Support Don't Punish. And that was a very well-run event at that time. I'm back in college now, so I'll be back with the SSDP this January actually now in UCC. I'm doing a
Right.
master's in biochemistry.
All right, good man. That is fantastic, man. That's fucking on yourself. Because the thing is, as I'm listening to you here, you'd be wasted in $100 a year job, man. You really would. You're obviously a really social guy, and yet to have that six. I was going to ask you about that because it was right in saying that you actually founded the group itself.
I set up it in CIT. So
Yeah.
the SSDP was originally set up in America back maybe 25 years ago or so.
Right.
Set up a bunch of students, and they turned it into an international organization. It was my buddy Graham DeBarla who brought it to Ireland. He met some of the guys while he was over in America at the time. He was in Colorado or somewhere like that anyway, and he got to meet some of the SSDP guys, and he was like, "Oh, that's a cool organization, and we want to do it in Ireland." So and that we did. The first year he set it up in UCC, actually, they weren't allowed to use the words sensible and drugs in the name of the
Is
organization
that right?
because the college said you can't take drugs sensibly or something like that. They were saying because down here we have Diageo and it's like drink sensibly.
Yeah.
So they were like, "Oh no, I believe that's what the issue was because Diageo probably give money to the college or something there anyway, you know,
Yeah.
because they do have their posters across the college because look, it's no secret that students drink and
Yeah.
they get the harm reduction information from their own drink." And our thing was to get the harm reduction information around drugs. So we were like students for sensible drug policy, and they were like, "No." So they had to set up as the Drug Awareness and Reform and Education Society. DARE, DARE, Drug Awareness, Reform and Education. Yeah.
Mhm. That is bizarre. What a bizarre circumstance. It sounds just
Yeah,
so
yeah.
obtuse. We've got the same. We've got Diageo just 10 minutes along the road, but that just shows you, man. You've not even been able to do any groundwork yet before the official narrative has to be kind of fine tuned. The language itself,
Yeah.
again, language is crucial when it comes to this situation, man. But on yourself, Martin, this is extremely productive stuff. Is it right in saying that you're attempting to do the same thing with cannabis? You're creating a social group where people can, you
Yeah.
know,
That's my aim, and this bloody whole restrictions now at the moment. So we're back in lockdown, much like yourselves, I think,
yeah,
above there. So we can't leave within 5 kilometers. We can't have guests to our house, and all of this kind of silly nonsense. But hopefully, once all of that stuff is done away with there, at the end of January, they're saying that we'll be loosening restrictions. I
yeah,
do intend to try to set up some area like that, just to bring people together to socialize. You know, this human right that we have, our freedom to kind of assemble and associate with each other. The hub won't be a place where people can come and buy cannabis. It's just where you can come and meet cannabis consumers.
yeah,
So we won't be really breaking any laws in setting it up. You know, if someone brings a joint and sparks it up in there, then obviously there's laws being broke. But look, we won't be promoting that sort of thing, at least publicly anyway.
yeah,
But if it happens, it'll be behind closed doors and in the security of our own private kind of a club hangout. You know, there shouldn't be like if we're in there and if somebody does spark up a joint, nobody is being hurt. There's a bunch of consenting adults indoors. And you know what? What's the problem there? Like there shouldn't be any infringement from our authorities kind of sticking their nose into our private affair when there's nobody being hurt. And this is the issue that is brought up around our human rights because we can't freedom of assembly because if we start having cannabis consumers congregating, say at a club, of course the authorities are going to start monitoring it, watching it, because it's a hot spot. Oh, you've cannabis consumers there, well, they're breaking the law.
yeah.
So like that's an discrimination and it's an intimidation on our community and on our freedom to assembly. You know, and it's wrong.
Yeah. No, it's 100% right, Martin. I mean, we, the Undersigned, that campaign group, they have a very similar approach where humans have the sovereign right to cannabis, which is obviously the biblical reference to
That's right. Yeah.
the original term of cannabis. Yeah, it's in a very outdated fucking position we're in here. You know, we're trying to push past continuously these hurdles all the time. Because it's the same thing. It's like 2 or 3 years ago, I think it was about 2 years ago, when I first started researching for the channel, I was enlightened to know how many cannabis social clubs are actually in the UK. You know, and this was something that's completely hidden. I've used cannabis much like yourself for years, man, and it's just all this has been suppressed continuously. And the basis of it is this is consenting adults. They're engaged in a recreational substance which encourages relaxation, it encourages benevolence, camaraderie, sharing, all these different things. And this is something that should be frowned upon, criminalised, put these people in prison. But this needs to go, But I don't know, what's it kind of like on the ground over in Ireland? I mean, is there a general consensus where people are accepting it?
I think the public, if you were to do literally, if we were to have a non-binding referendum like New Zealand had, I reckon we would get it passed. I think that there's definitely more in favor of a more liberalized kind of market there around cannabis and stuff. Like I think if you were to ask the question correctly, are you in favor of criminals selling cannabis? Are you in favor of a store regulated with like employee rights and all of that
Yeah.
stuff, and an age limit and quality control? Like if you were to ask the question correctly, I believe you would get much more people in favor. But if you were to just go out and say, "Oh, do you want to legalize cannabis?" A lot of people are going to say no because they don't understand what that means, because it can come in so many different shapes and sizes. But really, if you ask the question correctly, I believe that 75% of the public, at least 70% of the public, would be in favor of controlling the supply of cannabis. Um, that number would drop a little bit once you get out to the other drugs and other substances, plants and stuff. But I think cannabis, by and large, would have the support of the public here. Um, the authorities, though, unfortunately, they're just unwilling to engage. So today on my 420 News, I'm going ripping into our and inaptly named Green Party. They're called the Green Party, but they don't support
Yeah.
a bill which is going to be submitted there to the Irish government this year by People Before Profit, Gino Kenny. They're basically going to submit a bill to legalise cannabis, and the Green Party came out there in an article earlier this week saying that they don't support, or they don't believe that Ireland is ready to legalise cannabis,
On what
despite the
ground?
fact. I don't know what grounds really is that we have to deal with the COVID and things like that. I think COVID has been used basically as a scapegoat.
Right.
But when you go back, or going back a couple of months ago, the Green Party launched a policy document that favoured the decriminalisation of cannabis and setting up a coffee shop model, a tolerated coffee shop model. So these scumbags, right, rather than actually want to set up and they're saying they're tolerating it rather than actually regulating. So it's a tolerated, regulated coffee shops, which makes no sense. Like if it's regulated, then
It's already implied to be tolerated.
yeah, exactly. Like, so what they're saying is that they're not actually going to legalize cannabis per se, because if you've more than 5 grams on you, you're breaking the law. If you're growing more than 4 plants, as their doc policy says, you're breaking the law. So this isn't really legalization of cannabis at all. It's just moving the criminalization of it from one form to another. Because if you can only walk down the road with 5 grams of cannabis, but you can go into a shop and you can buy liters of vodka,
Yeah.
what the hell? Like, what kind of is that? That's discrimination again against us as a community, as cannabis consumers. You know, they have things in their policy document as well around not allowing edibles and stuff. You know, it just shows that the ignorance and how much they just don't know about cannabis and stuff. They just know that it is a populist issue, and the Green Party wanted to be seen to be supportive of it to get voters. And I know people who voted for him foolishly. I said it to him, like, don't vote for the Green Party at all, despite the fact that they support cannabis coffee shops. And that was my issue with them. I was like, the fact that they talk about cannabis coffee shops means they don't know what they're talking about, because Amsterdam is a mess.
Yeah.
Like the cannabis appears out of nowhere. There's like no legitimate suppliers of it. It's run by biker gangs and all of this kind of crazy stuff. Like, there's still all of these dodgy characters existing because of the toleration of coffee shops, rather than actually just setting up a legal industry as we do for any other kind of product out there. It's just it's boggles the mind really what these guys are trying to do.
It's really frustrating as well, man, because you kind of touched on it perfectly there, how many complex issues revolve around cannabis. So even just on the basis of what rewind right to the very beginning, the Green Party, an environmentally sound group, in theory, they would you would assume they would promote an environmentally sound product that's going to encourage the economy, help the environment, etc. So then that's one point at which it can do, obviously. And then you fast forward to the fact that when they're applying something like the coffee shop model, immediately stinks of somebody that knows nothing, because there is no coffee shop model. There's a model that includes coffee shops, and that's the issue. But then you've got that, and then again, because it's the same thing, they then break it down to the edibles. If you take away the basis of somebody being able to produce edibles and buy them in a normal confined, you're going to end up have to source them elsewhere. They could be contaminated, they could be poisonous. You never know. You're kind of going on the well-being and the faith of the individual that's produced them, who you don't know who it is. So with all these multitude of factors, it's the same thing with the can card thing that's been produced in the UK recently. Can card is just a fantastic thing. It does give a little green light to it, but you know, it also kind of implies an extra step where it's hindering towards legalization. It seems like there's constantly this
Yeah.
continuous repetition where it's like little baby steps. So it's like feeding the animal enough to keep it at bay. That's what it kind of like. Whereas the reality is, there's always going to be this hunger from the community, and it's really frustrating, Martin, because you're an Ireland man, and it's the same thing over here. You see the same thing, wee bits and pieces in America, because it's this broken down state dynamic. Then, so then they move it through. When on a federal level, you can see that there's a majority of states that are looking for legalization. It seems to be Canada is the only one that's actually taking the risk. And I use the term risk loosely because financially they've benefited. The only thing I think that they've maybe miscalculated, which is an inevitable rudimentary step, is the quantity that was going to be consumed. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, they fucked up big time over there, because when they legalized it, they messed it up big time. They tried to monopolize the market. They gave the ability to grow and produce to a small select few. But meanwhile, the actual growers who were growing it for years and actually supplying the market, they were left out. So of course, like
Right.
if you were getting quality cannabis from a grower all along, and meanwhile it gets legalized, and now he doesn't have a license, but he's still growing,
Yeah, you're going to get
why are you
penalty.
going? Why are you going to go anywhere else? Like
Yeah.
apparently the cannabis that came in the early parts of legalization in Canada was crap.
Was it?
Like the stuff that was being produced en masse by these big companies, because they were basically taking a big factory and just growing cannabis en masse. Like there was no hands on. There was no like real love put into the plant,
Yeah.
and that comes through in the end product. Like that might be good when you want a standardized pharmaceutical type of product, when you want reproducibility en masse.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like the likes of myself and yourself, and like the flavor chasers out there, the connoisseurs who have been consuming cannabis for the last God knows how long,
Yeah.
like they're going to see right above that, and they're going to keep going to the grower down the road who hasn't got a license now and has been left out in the kind of the era of legalization. That's wrong that they did that, and that's, I believe, where Canada messed up. They tried to keep it this kind of big top level, very clean, tight knit type of thing,
Yeah.
rather than opening up to the craft artisanal industries, all for the kind of the perspective of wanting to be seen as having control over the supply of it.
Yeah.
Because say if I could get a license to grow here and set up, and you know what, why can't I just produce cannabis according to in Ireland and in the UK we have good agricultural practices, and I
Yeah.
believe they have that in Canada as well, yeah, and in America, and all of those places. So we could just follow these regulations that are already there for good agricultural practices and produce the cannabis according to that. And there shouldn't be any issues once we follow these regulations that are there for strawberry producers, for cabbage growers. Once we grow accordingly, why do we need anything else? But
Yeah.
no, in Canada, they came along as if, no, we need to control this, and only 10 people are going to be able to grow cannabis for the whole of Canada.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous what they done over there. I don't
That
know if
is
it was a
ridiculous.
10 now, I'm just pulling that number out of the air, but it was a
Yeah.
small number of people who got access to be producing there first.
Yeah, that is ridiculous, Martin, because you would think that, because on the surface it very much looks like the fact that like you're implying, that they've got the control of it, but the reality is they don't at all. It's just there's been this mass-produced small number of people who didn't know what they're doing in the first place. It sounds like almost they're just trying to maintain the capitalist grip, because if you're to give it to the grassroots level of individuals such as myself, yourself, then you've lost control from the perspective of these multinational corporations. So it's again one of those regimented positions where it's like, right, we'll just keep it out of the hands of them, put it into the hands of the big business, and maintain the direction.
Yeah. That's kind of what it seems like. I would be advocating, if we were to legalize it here in Ireland, for at least the first 5 to 10 years, or some sort of an exclusionary period where these big companies from outside just can't come in and set up. And we need to give an advantage there to the people like, say, myself and others who've been kind of impacted by the laws. Because if cannabis was to be legalized, sure, I've been advocating for it all these years. I haven't been amassing any amount of money to
Mm.
invest into the industry myself. So like I'm at a disadvantage there. But meanwhile, the likes of Aurora,
Yeah.
Artillery, sure, they've got millions, they've got big huge investors. Sure, they can come and buy a big huge factory down the road, grow cannabis at a fraction of the price of what I would be able to grow it at, let's say, without all that investment. And sure, they just have me out of the market then based on that. So we're basically killing our own indigenous market then, if we don't have the proper policies there to reflect that. So I would advocate for even non-profit models in the early years of the industry, that it's be community orientated and consumer orientated, that quality and yeah, customer satisfaction come above profit. Because if it's a not-for-profit industry, sure, that's not a concern. Then really, at that point, it's about getting that product out there at an affordable cost to the consumers and to the and to the community. And I think that's what it's all about. You know, we've had so many years now where we've all been criminalized and all of that stuff. And if they were to legalize it, we need some time to gather ourselves, basically, before these corporates come in here and just start selling us a load of crap that,
Yeah.
you know, and people will buy it up because of the novelty. Oh, great, cannabis is finally legal. You know, go out there and just start buying. And like, you've all these corporates there with all of these different branded products. And meanwhile, your own indigenous guys are high and dry.
Yeah, I think the only way to maybe maintain control of that, and Martin, is probably cannabis social clubs. Cannabis social clubs that are locally owned are the best way forward for maintaining local control, because of that thing as well about pushing forward. So it's legal to grow, but only 4 plants. Ideally 6. Nobody really needs any more than 6. You can do a fantastic grow with 2. Let's be honest. It's your light plant ratio. You can do, and you've got enough for 2. But if we go for 6, because it seems to be the standardised number, that still allows maintain of control for the local people, because you're then dealing with just this exchanging. You know, I've got this, you've got that. Very much like tomatoes with farmers now. It's different. It sounds bizarre to make the comparison, but it's exactly the same. You know,
Yeah.
so I think kind of social clubs, as long as they weren't monopolised through, like, became a Starbucks chain or Costa or something
Yeah.
like that, then I think then we could maybe use that as some space. But it certainly seems to be a difficult position.
It is, but it's just, it's not impossible.
No,
It's certainly not impossible. And the Cannabis Social Club model would be certainly one that would be in line then with that not-for-profit model, where you bring together a bunch of like-minded people and they work it out. Who's going to be the grower? What's going to be the area? What's the cost? How much do the members have to pay? And what do we do at the end of the year with any excess funds there? Oh, well, we
yeah.
just throw a kick-ass party for the members, you know, rather than some dude in a suit just going off with a suitcase full of money off the
Yeah,
back of all of these people who've been buying his products all along, you know. The
yeah,
money stays within the community. And I think that's what the community needs at the moment, to rebuild itself, because we've been incredibly damaged over the last, geez, what is it, 70 odd years now? No,
yeah.
90 years that the cannabis prohibition has been in place. So that's a lot of time to be made up for our community.
It's very bizarre, because it is, I think, like 1927, I think, when it became first illegal, I think, in the UK, maybe getting it slightly wrong there. But you've got individuals who have been starved of medicine. The reality is, individuals have died because they've not had cannabis. Like, there are people that like, you know, cancerous circumstances, medical issues that would have been resolved, or at least put at bay, being allowed to be maintained over long periods of time because of cannabis interaction physiologically, you know. So it's like, and then you've got people that are criminalised recreationally because, like yourselves, like to just sit and relax and watch television. And I think that's quite a bizarre thing. I interviewed Gary Yodes, and here's a cannabis social club, and he described it as, and the first time they're getting busted, they're all sitting there getting stoned, everybody's relaxing, having a good time, and then there's these aggressive police breaking down the door and disrupting everybody. He says
Yeah,
this is it's a paradox of
yeah.
circumstances. You know, these are they're coming
Police
to
become the
arrest us.
terrorists.
Sorry.
The police become the terrorists in that situation. They're
Exactly, and
terrorizing
and
us.
they're dressed like it. They come in looking like they're ready for warfare, and then they're in the video sitting there asking for like another sandwich. It's like, this is, you know, it's a ridiculous situation that we're finding. But
Yeah,
a point I would make is, you know, the thing that you're doing, the thing I'm doing with the channel, these help, because individuals will just come across it, they might just, you know, listen to for a while or anything like that, and then they get information that
oh,
they're
big
like, oh,
time.
wait a minute, I didn't realise that. Because I think the stereotype of people that consume cannabis are lethargic stoners who don't contribute. And I think that's the gist, and it's so far from the truth. It's ridiculous.
No, when I first got caught with a bit of hash, I was 17, and I couldn't wait to get home to get onto the internet to look up the bloody law that this guard had quoted to me at the side of the road, which was I'm searching a car under the Misuse of Drugs Act 1977, and she quoted some section, and I was just like, what gave her the right to search my car? I was just like, what's this law? Because I had done nothing on the evening in question. I was literally out with my girlfriend. We were up at the airport watching bloody airplanes land. But what I found out afterwards was there's a security camera up there, so that the security were probably watching us up there. But I wasn't even smoking up there. We were just hanging out with the girlfriend. But look, I was, as I said, 17 at the time. I had only just got my full license, And I was out hanging out with the girlfriend, up at the back of the airport, doing the things you do at the back of the airport. And we were driving back from there, next to blue lights on behind us. It was a two-bang Gardaí actually that evening who searched the car. And I just never forget it, man. They tore my car upside down, like ripped it apart. And I'd given them the hash when they asked. They were like, is there anything in the car that shouldn't be in the car? We're going searching it anyway. And I was like, oh shit, I've in the glove box there, I have a little tin, and there was a nodge of hash in it, about maybe just less than a quarter of hash.
Right.
And there was a grinder in there actually as well, I think. But there was nothing in the grinder. But they confiscated it all, man. And yeah, I went home, educated myself. I couldn't just stop. Like they just opened up a bloody can of worms that I've been running on since, and I haven't stopped. I was 17. I'm 31 now.
Yeah.
I've been stopped and searched, I believe, more than 50, 60 times, I would say. I've been caught with cannabis going on 13 times now, maybe 14. Kind of last count, really. Been to court 9 times, where I got the benefit of the donation to the charity box. I represented myself about 11 of the times. There was
Right.
twice I got solicitors, and I regret ever having to deal with a solicitor, because if you got a voice and you know how to use it, like use your own voice. That's my belief. I don't believe I've done anything wrong. But when the solicitor was speaking for me, he believed I'd done something wrong. He respected the law, but I didn't. I was like, no, I respect my human rights more. I'm like, this law is infringing upon me. We're in a democracy. I'm like, hello, I'm a citizen. This is a democracy. What you're
Yeah.
doing here, Mr. Judge, is harming me. And I said this to the judge, and he was like, this is the court of law. This is not a place where we discuss the law. It's only where we enforce it.
Right.
It was just like, you sadistic bastard is
Yeah.
what I was thinking. I didn't say it to him, it was what I was thinking. I was just like, I'm a human being. I'm telling you about how, like, your job is infringing upon my life. It's affecting my kid's life. And he was just taking none of it at all on board. It was just like, no, here we have a couple of words written down on a piece of paper that says what you done is wrong. And it was put there at a time when also had words like condoms are bad for us, and being gay was bad for us, So these words were on the paper around the same time. And he's going to uphold them. And I'm just like, what the hell is wrong with people at all? Like, why do I go to prison for this and get locked up behind bars? But our health ministers, your health ministers, who keep this medicine from kids who bloody die without it, they don't go to jail.
The same health ministers that are actually directly profiting, as you mentioned earlier. I know these are the same people that just a few years ago we had, like, in the newspaper, like MP has third house paid for by fucking taxpayer, and all these different things like using the expenses. Like, I think one of the most ridiculous ones that they found for politicians using expenses, taxpayer money, was to clean their bird box. I'll have to find this article and put it up for people to see. It's like,
bird box.
yeah, the bird box at the bottom of the garden for birds to come in, and they got, it was like, I don't know, maybe either way, anything more than a quid's ridiculous amount to clean a bird box, really, and they use taxpayer money, and these are the same people that are supposed to be, like, we know this thing, Nicola Atkins, I think her husband had invested interest in cannabis. Theresa May's husband taking Lyle Sugar. These are the same people that are at school together. I mean, we've got the school photos of, you got like David Cameron and Boris Johnson all together, and then these are the same people running the country. This is a systematic issue. This isn't just a cannabis issue. This is a systematic failing of, because the thing that when you're describing that there in particular, it popped in my head, when you're in court and you're dealing with this human face that's implementing this so-called law, it's bizarre when you think about it that there's so much impact that comes from such an abstract concept. Because the basis of it is, these illegitimate laws are made up by a collection of humans only. So, and it's regimented through the court proceedings, the politicians, the lawyers that put into place, and all this framework of human interaction makes up this illegitimate process. So that's where the language comes in, that using language to deconstruct is essentially the only direction to kind of get these individuals into a position where they can't turn around and implement anything that's other than like what the public are pushing forward. And cannabis is like, this is almost an exhausting issue. Sometimes I think to myself, I've said it a couple of times on the channel, where I'm looking forward to them legalizing cannabis so we can all just get on with our life.
Yeah, man, I hate having to talk about cannabis so much. There's so much more that I'm interested in life, but I only express myself around cannabis, especially online anyway. Like, if you go into my social media, for as long as I've been on social media, I've always used it as a platform for my activism. I rarely would be a person to be sharing photos of family and things like that. It would be always around my activism. And mainly just because of how my lived experience, basically. I'm and just express myself in that way. But there's
Yeah.
so much more to me that I would love to be expressing, but I just believe that I have to channel all my energy into this because
Yeah.
it's just such a fucking issue. Like at any moment, the cop could come in my door, and because I have a grinder here with cannabis,
Yeah.
it justifies him entering my house, and it could see me be put behind bars. In Ireland, it's up to 1 year they can lock you up for simple possession.
Jesus.
Um,
So simple possession gets you in jail for a year in Ireland. Is that right?
well, that's the maximum.
Right.
Nobody ever really gets the
Is that
year.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. But
Still
that's the maximum.
ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, and they can give you a €1,500 fine on top of that as well.
Yeah.
So it's just bang out of order. Like I said it to the judge the last I was only in court in September, again representing myself.
Right.
And again, I kind of said it to the judge. He was like, I can lock you up for a year for this. And I was like, Judge, you can give me a €1,500 fine and lock me up for a year for this. I
Yeah.
goes, but I goes, I'm not afraid of you. I goes, I'm more afraid of the continuation of this law. And I goes, if you lock me up, you'll be locking me up for my protest of it, and not for my possession of cannabis.
Yeah.
Because I could have went into that court and said, yes or no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. I'm sorry, sir. I'm a drug addict, sir. I'll do all of these drug rehabilitation programs, sir.
Yeah.
And played the game and got off with a slap on the wrist. But
Mm.
I just can't do that. I can't do that. Like I've been there too many times,
Yeah.
and I just can't do that. I have to stand up for what is right. We live in a
Good for you.
democracy at the end of the day,
Good for
and
you, Martin.
yeah, but I don't believe that they're going to kill me for my beliefs.
Mm.
There's people before, like we had the Irish uprising and stuff like that here, where people died for their beliefs,
Yeah.
for their want of freedom, and they were willing to die for it. Like nobody's threatening to kill me for this. They're only threatening to take away my supposed freedom, lock
Yeah.
me up behind actual bars. But like the way I see it right now, I'm still not free because I can't go up my back garden and plant a seed and grow a plant that I would like to,
Yeah.
despite the fact that it doesn't put anybody else around me in danger.
Yeah.
So
No,
it's just ridiculous. I can walk out the road, like again, my background, herbal science. I could walk out the road and I can find countless plants that I can make teas out of and kill you. And these aren't controlled. These aren't
Fucking
regulated.
Breaking Bad.
Yeah. No, exactly. Ricin. There you
Yeah.
go. Like it's simple, and it's not an illegal thing. It's obviously illegal to kill somebody, but
Yeah, of
like, why do we have a regulation around cannabis banning my ability to grow it? But I can go to the road and I can pick up foxglove, and
Yeah.
it's got digitalis in it, and that'll give many people a heart attack
Yeah.
in the right dosage. So
And the
it's
thing is,
just
it is ridiculous when we go down the road of that particular direction of like the drugs and how drugs/plants are illegalized and all these different things. It's like it becomes ridiculous because all of a sudden every single human has to be incarcerated for carrying DMT.
yeah.
It's like
We all have it endogenously in us.
exactly. So it's like it's ridiculous when you look at it that way. But yeah, we're dealing with a really complex situation, and even just like you're describing, it's great that you're having the courage to do that, Martin. Because a lot of people won't. A lot of people will just go, it's like, look, your word is your bond as a human
Mhm.
being, and that's what this is. And the reality is, there is no. Sometimes I've been asked in the past. I have no doubt you've been asked the same thing about like your passion behind this. What is your passion behind this? And the go-to place is always people are dying because they're trying to get medicine for this. Like, that's the
Yeah.
reality of it. People are going to prison because they're sitting relaxing for this. So this is almost one of the last legitimate martyrdom topics almost, if you
Yeah.
think about it in that direction, because it's like it's worth sacrificing yourself for. It's
Mhm.
really is that serious. And even
Yeah.
I think recently, I think Tannanine Montgomery, I think her daughter was the same thing. She was in the paper. She can't get medicine, and
No.
this is it. The whole year we've had this conversation going into last year, 2018. It changed over because of these children requiring medicine, and we're still dealing with that same situation now. So
And the only reason the barriers are there for them is because of the say people like myself and yourself who want to use it like what they say recreationally.
yeah,
That when they made cannabis illegal, like they didn't keep it from people like myself and yourself. Who they really kept cannabis from was the researchers
yeah,
and the professionals, the health professionals. They took it away from them. Like in 1942, it was removed from the American Herbal Pharmacopoeia, and I was at the British. It was removed from one of them. It was removed from the two of them.
that's a
One
great
of them in
point, Martin.
1942. I can't remember where it was removed from in the British one. But when they removed cannabis from those basic reference points, that's where herbalists went to get reference for tinctures, for for treating symptoms of conditions. Cannabis was listed there in the British and American Herbal Pharmacopoeia for, you can guess it, chronic pain,
Yeah.
for seizures. It was
Yeah.
listed there, and they had instructions how to grow the plant, how to extract from the plant, and how herbalists could use it. And they took that information out of these things, and like information is the most powerful thing we have, and you can really see when they remove the information around cannabis from the source of the information, which is the herbal pharmacopoeias. You really see the motive behind it. It's not to it's not to help us at all, because why would you take the information around the benefits and from the places where people get that information,
Yeah.
because public policy, they say, oh, cannabis prohibition is for public health reasons.
Mm.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
It's never been about public health reasons. If it was, they would have kept them information in the herbal pharmacopoeias for one,
Mm.
So, and they would have allowed for health professionals to work with it for two, and they still could have enacted their prohibition around people using it recreationally. But no, it wasn't about that at all. It was around, I don't know, you could get into the conspiracy theories now. People think you're nutbags, but the Randolph Hearst, like the guys with the paper industries, the
Yeah.
petrochemical industries, you in America, you've the prison and industrial complex. And there's so many people that make benefits from the prohibition of cannabis and other drugs, plants mainly, and
Yeah.
mushrooms.
Yeah.
That you just follow the money.
Yeah.
That's what to say. You follow the money and you see it. Like, I mean, when you look at it, like, why isn't there prohibition on all these other dangerous plants out there? Why is it psilocybin mushrooms? Why is it the ayahuasca, the DMTs? Like, why are these the ones that we make illegal? And you look into it, then, like, you're like, shit, these are tools that us human beings have been using for millennia,
Yeah.
that have been enlightening us. Like, you look into the Christianity and stuff, there's a really good book out there, The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, as the how Christianity is founded on a mushroom cult.
Yeah.
And these kind of benevolent people before, they talk the stories. And basically, this is how humans communicated. We would create stories, and within the stories, there was information to be carried on through the generations by the retelling of these stories. Well, along comes the Roman Catholics or whoever these guys were, and they're like, right, we take these stories, we just twist them a little bit, and we take the psychedelic parts out of it, and we kind of just remain at that we're the communicators between the heavens and the earth. The Pope is the communicator between the heavens and the earth, and all of this kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
Whereas all along it was us, the people. We all had it within us. I done a very good interview with Danny Nemu, and he talks about like the complexities of translating the Bible from that ancient ancient Hebrew, and he talks about like just the opening sentence of the Bible is, in the beginning he created the heavens and the earth.
Yeah.
He says that can also be translated to, in the head he created God, and you are the heavens and the earth.
Right.
So that is a completely different in translation. That is much more empowering to the individual who reads it. So if you have two books, one that says that God created the heavens and the earth, and another one that says God exists within you and you are the heavens and the earth.
Yeah.
Those are two completely different translations that would lead you down completely different trajectories in life. And you just look at it like it's all about powers, tools of control over you. And you look at it, prohibition of drugs. They don't prohibit the ones that actually kill you. They prohibit the ones that open your mind, that might empower you.
That's brilliant, Martin, because it's like what you're describing here, the mythological consciousness of humans. I love that stuff, man. I fucking love that shit. It's like, the thing is, anybody watching this right now, man, anybody that like actually knows me personally will be sitting like, who the fuck's he got on the channel here, man? Because honestly, man, I'm exactly the same. Like, I'm a big fan of like mythology in particular, but archetypes in particular as well. Carl Jung's take on archetypes and how they essentially are embedded in the subconscious of the human, and then obviously these stories which surround us, even to the point of the new Marvel stories, and like Star Wars. Star Wars was rooted in a mythological symbology, essentially. Each single one of these things are exactly the kind of they always call it new age thinking. It's not new age thinking, it's fucking old thinking. It's just become allowed to be seen again, and that's what's going on. And I do think that substances like you're mentioning, like cannabis in particular, but also ayahuasca, DMT, psilocybin, all these chemicals are like they are tools, they're utilities for expanding consciousness. One of the things that I was talking about to a friend the other day was the molecular similarity between psilocybin and serotonin, and how your
Hmm.
serotogenic system essentially outlines a framework in your body. And neurologically, psilocybin comes along, stimulates that framework in a way that your default mode network goes down, your sensory perception is increased, and therefore your information receptors are much more readily available. And then these are the exact substances, as you've perfectly articulated, that the government, those in power, are like, right, let's get rid of these. Let's just put McDonald's alcohol in news at fucking 6 o'clock in front of everybody, and here we go. And this is what we're dealing with. So yeah, I fully agree, Martin. I'm exactly the same. Did I see somewhere that you actually have a mushroom type association? Do you have like a website that you sell them or something?
I was trying to set up a business when I graduated herbal science called the Super Fungi. It
Right.
was around functional foods. We're using mushroom extracts and combining them with other kind of superfoods. So one of the products we had there, and hoping to get back into that actually in 2021, trying to just get health food products out there to people. I need to come up with some way to make a bit of money. I've been on the dole all along now,
Yeah.
so I've to try to get off of that. But I want to keep it in line with what I want to do. So yeah, I was selling those mushroom extracts for a while under the name Super Fungi.
Yeah.
But going back a while back, DMT was a big interest for me. I researched that stuff for well over a year back in 2014.
Right.
And get then early, like late in 2014, I went away and I made it, and I just kind of made my own at home because you
Mhm.
just can't trust the stuff out there.
No, of course not.
Um, and man, it changed my way of seeing the world in certain regards. I used to have an insomnia at nighttime around the thought of death and the afterlife.
Right.
Sometimes, the idea of like, is it like when you switch off the TV that there's just
Mhm.
nothing and you just cease to exist? And sure, if that is the case, sure, that is grand. You won't ever know. But at nighttime, when you think about that, it you create this anxiety inside of me, and make me not able to sleep. One blast off dose of the DMT, and I've never experienced that anxiety around death. I've now come to terms with the role death has in life. It's a
Right.
part of life. You can't have life without death, I suppose, in certain regards. And so
Did you
it's
manage to have a breakthrough experience when you take DMT?
yeah.
Was it a breakthrough?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first one, I made sure I had a breakthrough dose. We just, I think that the dose recommendation was like 50 milligrams, and I had about maybe 125 to
Yeah.
150 milligrams. It was hard to weigh it out because we didn't have such a sensitive weighing scales at the time.
Right.
So what I ended up doing was I weighed out 0.25 of a gram, and I split that in half as
Right.
best I could by eyeballing it. So, but I definitely had a blast off experience. It was short lived. I recorded the whole thing, and I was back and all within 7 minutes,
Right.
and I would been completely grounded in reality again after about 15 minutes, as in the
Right.
fractals and everything had dissipated. Then at that point, but still to this day, I have no anxiety around that. Still okay with it. And after that experience, like there was no rush back to DMT. Like it wasn't something that you want to be doing every weekend. That
Oh.
kind of thing.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of off topic for cannabis, but could you dive into your DMT experience a wee bit more? Because let's say I've had a similar experience, but I'd like to hear your situation where it's like, what did you meet the machine elves? Did you chat with these people? Did they tell you stuff?
I didn't meet machine elves as such. The way I felt, it started off in the pinpoint of like the center of my vision, a little dot, a speck of light, then boom, rushed in around me. Then I kind of was like, right, I'll closed my eyes, and the whole vision then was just lit up with all geometrics. But my two friends were sitting there beside me, and I can remember like having a glowing kind of outline of where they were sitting, despite
Right.
the fact my eyes were closed now at this point. They were still there in my vision.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they were gone. And it was like I was sat into a seat. It was almost like an amusement ride of some sorts. And you go off. But at a certain point upon that, like I kind of lost all sense of time and being and who I was and everything. There was all sorts of kind of, there was information being delivered. I was seeing things like books, but they were just flying through. Like there was just heaps and heaps of books. Like there was like stacks and towers of them, Egyptian type of hieroglyphs and stuff like that. there was definitely a sense of an accompaniment, somebody being there with me, bringing me on this journey and
Right.
showing me this stuff.
Mm.
And I had no sense of communication. I felt like I was communicated with, but had no words or anything that was said to me at all. It was just this presence that I was felt, and the intention of the presence was felt then as well. This all sounds wishy-washy, like, but
No, it
when
doesn't.
you actually
Yeah.
experience it, like, it's just like, it's so hard to put into words really afterwards. That's why I actually recorded it, because like, I'm not very good with writing stuff down, so I was just like, right, throw a camera in front of me, and when I came back I just started downloading and divulging all the thing. But the thing that came through in the video was just my astonishment, my amazement, just my disbelief of the whole experience. I was just like, whoa, oh my god,
Yeah.
that's what I was doing for like the first 2 minutes. I was just like, oh my god, like, whoa, it was just amazement. And I was trying to explain it then to my friends, oh, there was hieroglyphs, I was being brought on a journey, they were showing me stuff, there was books, and I was just really amazed. And
Yeah.
I was just very hard to get the words out of the experience, which is concurrent with other people's experience of DMT. I really want to go and try the ayahuasca and the slower, more kind of yeah, just where you're supposed to be able to bring a lot more of the experience back, the more of the communication, the machine elves now, and all of those kind of interactions with Mother Ayahuasca and stuff that they
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, because
I'd love to
ayahuasca
do.
is supposed to be over the course of like 4 hours. Something you ingest it through a tea for anybody that's unaware. I'm sure most of the viewers will
Yeah.
be aware of this. There's no danger somebody watching this and not be aware of ayahuasca.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so,
About 8 hours at last, I'd say. Yeah, the ayahuasca.
yeah,
But what's supposed to be the most curious part is the Icaros that they play with the shamans and stuff, and how this Icaros can influence, and the experience is kind of is motored by it. It was
right.
interesting. Again, going back to the interview with Danny Nemu, he talks about when they set up the Sante Daime religion, which is a religion around DMT and ayahuasca. That basically one of I can't remember the name of the guy, but he had this experience. He was up there in the DMT or the ayahuasca realm, and
Mm.
he was like, "Oh, they have this thing up there where they give thanks or praise or something, to shout out these chants." And they brought that then back from their kind of ayahuasca experience, and they incorporated it into their Santa Daime religion.
All right.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called now. So forgive me for bringing it up, not being able to actually divulge more on it. Like,
No, that sounds
but
cool, man. I like that kind of stuff.
yeah, but the Santa Daime religion, like that's a really interesting one that I've been kind of learning a little bit more about, and I would like to kind of get involved with. But again, look, the whole thing is illegal because
Yeah,
of the substance, which is annoying. Again, like, when you go from cannabis and you're looking at these other ones now, and for different reasons.
yeah,
When I tried cannabis, it was because of peer pressure.
yeah,
When I tried DMT, it was because of curiosity. It was just
yeah.
like, this is very intriguing. People claiming to me God. Of
Mm.
course, who wouldn't want to try that? Like,
Where is he? I've got a few things to tell him.
do you know what I mean? Too right.
No, that's a great point, Martin, because it does highlight you as an individual as relatively like curious as a person, and that's because that's
Yeah.
I had the same situation with these substances in particular. There's a book I read recently, and it's I think it was called DNA, the Cosmos and the Serpent, or Cosmic Serpent, or something like that.
Yeah.
Forgive me, I can't remember the title. Are you familiar with this book? No.
No, it sounds familiar, but
Yeah, I can't quite remember the guy's name, but he had this he had a theory, proposed a theory. He's an anthropologist, and he studied with Amazonian tribes for 10, 15 years, and he exchanged his knowledge of numeracy for their knowledge of ayahuasca. And what he'd found was, over the course of 10, 15 years, he'd kind of proposed a theory that there seemed to be a predominant mythological inclusion, which was a serpent. There always seemed to be a serpent experience with these things, which would wrap around the individual in a coil-like fashion. And then, obviously, that, like you mentioned, they also divulge information as well. So what he found was that because of these substances lower the default mode network, he kind of proposed a theory that this coiled-like the substance, this serpent that kind of always wraps itself around you and divulges information, was DNA. And what, because the default mode network got to be reduced to such an extent that you were actually experiencing these mythological images, which were actually, he interpreted as cellular processes, You know, so that's why all these different things, which is really extremely interesting, in particular that it's like the serpent and all that, and the DNA.
Yeah.
And I've absolutely butchered his work, obviously. but
I
anybody
do.
that's anybody that's interested in this thing, type it in, and Cosmic Serpent, and you'll get the gist of it. But yeah, so I mean, I was going to actually say to you, Martin, planting a cannabis plant outside Cork City Council, high five.
Nice one, man. I plan to do a lot more of that kind of activism this year.
Yeah.
Only because of the restrictions, I would be kind of out there organizing more people to come together. But because of the restrictions, I think small solo type protests. So we stuff going on down here now at the moment because of these CBD flowers.
Right.
So they're semi-illegal, kind of. They're in a grey area. So I might try to incorporate those into some sort of protests, because you can order them now easily to your door. You can get a half ounce of CBD flower delivered for €100 or so.
Yeah.
It's cheap enough, and sure, you can just go down to the guard station there with a small bit at a time and just be like, civil disobedience protest. Do your work, guard. Because
Yeah.
that's the thing about those type of protests is it's a power shift. So when the cop, as I said a while ago, I've got some cannabis there now, and if a cop comes into my house right now, he has authority over me because of our government and the policies and stuff, and he can tell me where to stand and where to sit and all of this kind of nonsense, because he has a power over me.
Yeah.
But if I go to their house, if I go to the guard station and I have cannabis and I want you to arrest me, it just takes them back. It's just like, what? No, I'm supposed to come to you. Why are you here with me? Like, you know what I mean? It really just messes them up a little bit. But then you get to deliver the message then, and you use social media and stuff like that to get it out there to people. That was a very well received protest that I done that time. Actually, it was it wasn't the planting in the city hall that time. I'm on about I planted seeds in a pot in the city centre. I invited members of the public to actually come and do it. And I have videos of people coming planting seeds, saying why they were planting the seeds, and there were seeds of freedom and a seed of protest. And
Excellent.
I brought the pot to the guard station. Then afterwards, and I went into the garden, I was like, inside in this pot is about 20 or 30 cannabis seeds, which can produce cannabis plants. And I was like, I would like you to do me now for cultivation of cannabis, because the soil was wet, the seeds, if they were left alone, they were going to germinate. And that is an illegal act of cultivation. So I was trying to just annoy the guards a little bit, but I was highlighting the absurdity of the law.
What was the response as well when you went in?
Again, as I say, like, they were a bit taken back, like they were surprised. There was a couple of people there with me on the day. There was about maybe 12 of us. But they were a bit surprised, but they were happy to kind of process me, I suppose. I had to explain myself to them a couple of times, but I kept a cool, level-headed. I explained what I was doing and why I was doing it, and they had to do their job then at that point, because I was reporting that I was committing a crime, and they wrote it down in their book. I've never heard back from them now yet. I say yet because I got caught with a joint April 2019, and they didn't get a summons to me till June 2020. So it takes them over a year just to process that file.
A joint.
Yeah, for the joint. Yeah, €10 worth of cannabis. There was no tobacco in there either, because I don't mix.
No, good man. Good. I smoke it pure as well.
Happy days. But yeah, it's something that we need to shake off. I think it's us just so. I think we only mix just because of the rollies and wanting to hide it. I think that's it. If you go to America, like, very little people will mix.
I think that it's a similar thing. I found the same thing. It was Europe predominantly, because it was tobacco mixed with it. And do you know what I think it might have been is that we didn't really have an abundance of grass.
Yeah, the hash.
And I think so. It's hash, man. So you couldn't really smoke it with, unless it was with a pipe. You had to have it with tobacco. So it maybe just this social thing that was integrated over time.
Yeah, you're dead right. Yeah, spot on. And even what we know now, even hash, like, it's probably best eaten rather than smoked. And if you are going to smoke it, it's probably best to use a vaporizer, or get it into a really pure form and start doing these dabs. That they called the dabs there recently down here, the crack cocaine of cannabis.
That sounds lovely. That sounds really appetizing.
It just goes to show these guys don't have a clue what they're even talking about are all out there. Like they say, the dabs can be the shatter extracts can be 4 times more potent than the cannabis. Yeah. But like, what's your point? Like, exactly. Vodka is 4 times more potent than beer. Like, So we just make consumers aware of this and consume accordingly. What's your problem? Like this effort to demonize it, and the crack cocaine of cannabis, like it really goes to show their motive, like that they're trying to show the stuff in such a bad light.
Yeah.
Dingy, shady, crack.
That's ridiculous. It's the same thing again. We're just touching on it's the language barrier again, man. The language barrier. It's like the skunk. The skunk is the repetition you see in the paper. So it's like skunk, and you're thinking yourself like skunk's relatively weak in comparison to some of the stuff that's out nowadays. It's like if you got skunk, you'd be quite disappointed.
And that pissed me off for so long, that skunk stuff from the UK. I'm like, there's no such thing as skunk cannabis.
Yeah.
This is just like it's like what they made up about hemp. There's no such thing as hemp. It's a word used within industry to refer to a certain type of the cannabis plant.
Yeah.
But there is no hemp plant. Like if you look up the scientific literature as such, like there's no definition. Hemp is an industrial term.
Yeah.
Skunk is a political term used to demonize cannabis. Like there is no existing thing. Yeah, they try to define it then. Oh, it's high THC cannabis. That's what skunk is.
Yeah.
Come on, skunk really, like when we look at it, skunk was a strain that was brought up because of the smell from the cannabis, That's why it was skunk number one, super skunk, purple, all of the skunks that were out there. It was never about being high THC. It was about the smell.
Yeah.
And that pissed me off, man, when the policymakers and the guys over there trying to demonize it,
Yeah.
Like what I loved was Professor Nutt's response on that Channel 4 the program he was on there one night, and they were trying to he was explaining it. He was like, look, skunk is just cannabis. He goes, if I was to put it anywhere, he goes, on your list, he was like, I'm not going to put it where they wanted to put it, which was up at like number 3. He was like, I'm just going to put it one above cannabis, because if you're trying to say it's high strength cannabis, okay, well, I'll just put it one above cannabis.
Yeah.
But it was still at like number 16 on the list of 20. So it really flew into the face of what the guys were trying to portray on Channel 4.
And most likely the other ones, if it was like number 16 out of 20 or whatever, most likely the other ones you probably have pharmaceuticals and benzodiazepines like preceding cannabis as harm, because let's say that's again another fucking podcast, but benzodiazepines, man. The fact that we're talking about the benefit of cannabis, and what shouldn't really be discussed really much unless it's new research being referred to, because everybody knows that it's good for you. I think there was a guy, it was actually Carly Barton that put it up on her Facebook page, where the guy that he was like a drug policy advisor person. I can't remember his name, Byers or something like that. I'll put the link up.
Mike Barnes.
But, no, I don't think it was Mike Barnes, because this individual was being derogatory about cannabis. He referred to cannabis in the same light of poison. He actually said that it's been known to be poisonous in high concentrations or something like that, which immediately just launched for me pausing the space bar and fucking shouting it, like, what the fuck? Because this is an outdated position, dinosaur rhetoric. It needs to be extinct.
Yeah, well, one thing I will say, look, there has been evidence to say that cannabis and like anything in the right dose can be a poison. Cannabis can as well be a poison to some people. So some people use it to treat their seizures, but there's certain strains or ratios of cannabinoids, let's say, that can actually trigger seizures in people too.
Yeah.
So the
frustratingly, the term poisonous, Carly should articulate that the poisonous term had to include death. And that's what it was, like serious injury or death. That was the term. So it's like
we can define water as being poisonous, because if you sit there and you drink 8 liters of water within an hour, you will drown. Like you would physically drown yourself, and water can be defined then as poisonous because and the dosage to define it as a poison is 8 liters in 1 hour. And that could be the same then for cannabis. But look, what could be a poison for me might be a cure for you.
Yeah.
When it comes to cannabis.
Yeah, no, 100%, Martin. It's again, just touching on the subjectivity of cannabis, which adds to the complexity of the conversation when it comes to people not being aware of it, because you could see how people walking into this conversation at the beginning with no knowledge of cannabis would be lost, because there's such there is no one talking point. There's a multitude of talking points. There's a multitude of depth within each talking point. So it's a constant struggle. But I know you're going to wrap up soon, Martin. So you want to throw in anything to this conversation before we get going?
No, not at all. Just anybody out there, if they want to see more of me, Martin's World, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, that's where you will find me. Go live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 4:20 on Facebook. and I do the 420 news there. So so those are the places where you'll find me. If anybody out there down south of the border there wants to get involved in activism as well, do definitely get in touch. I want to try to network with as many people in as many towns, cities, and counties across the island of Ireland, to kind of just to be active and to coordinate our efforts then as well, so we can be seen as a more organised and representative group.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, man. I'll put all the links you've just described in the description box below. Have a great day, man, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Connor, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks to Martin for giving me his time, and thanks to you for sticking around until the end of the video. I sincerely hope you enjoy the content. I'll see you next time.